Hello, hey, welcome to the Iron Rodcast. This is podcast number 5. The Iron Rodcast, where we don't necessarily walk the walk, but we definitely talk the talk.
How long have you been working on that?
I think that came to me like 2 days ago. Yeah, I couldn't wait to use it.
That's Peter and John, and this is Rhett filling in for James.
Yes,
like
once
that.
Again, filling in for Peter.
Sidebar.
We didn't elaborate on that joke last time. We're almost Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, church was good. Bishop was gone, so I actually kind of was somewhat active in church today. And
Yeah,
I taught part of your lesson
that.
there. Unfortunately, I was sitting next to a bunch of girls on the far side of the wall, and I remembered why I tend not to learn too much in Sunday school, because there's like girls in there.
Yeah.
So I did what I could, but
I know that I'm fighting a losing battle there, so I accepted it long ago, and I just moved on, and I do the best with what I
Obviously, Peter taught the lesson.
Yes. Maybe if you dressed a little more provocatively. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
A little more plunging neckline is.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to see that.
That's true.
What do you suppose today's lesson was called?
I know what was in the.
I know what it was called.
bulletin.
It was lesson 17.
It was lesson 17. I just decided to skip 16 because honestly, it was just the story of Balaam and the talking donkey.
You mentioned how much you hate that guy last week.
Wait, I did?
Well, you said you were going to skip over his story. I thought it was pretty disrespectful, but go ahead.
He mentioned it.
Anyway, I decided to skip it because of the that one Sunday where we had the guest lecturer come in, and so we just went on to lesson 17. So we're back on track and right where we should be for the year.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything's okay.
So, and the lesson was called?
Lest we forget, or something about forgetting. It's basically the book of Deuteronomy. Was the material that I had to work with, and the main points that the lesson manual wanted me to go with was to talk a little bit about remembrance and forgetting, because the entire book of Deuteronomy is there are 3 sermons that Moses gives to the people. I think 1 through 4, 5 through like 22 or 26, and then another one that goes up to 32. And then 32 is the big song that they all sing. And anyway, so the whole point of the fact is, this is right before the Israelites are going down into, like, the 40 years are up. Everybody except for, I think, Joshua and I want to say Caleb, I think is his name, are all dead from the original Egyptian time. So they are on their way down there, and Moses is giving them this speech to say, hey, okay, you guys need to remember this. You need to understand these things and burn this into your memory, because otherwise you're going to fall prey to worldliness. So I kind of started out the lesson with talking a little bit about worldliness and how, there's, I think our great test is, we're in this land now, and we are going to get rich because we're an industrious people, and being careful that we don't let worldliness come in to the point that we say, oh, well, we don't really need God or church or anything because everything's just fine in my life. Everything's just dandy. And then there were some other things in the lesson material. I kind of deviated a little bit from it, and I focused just basically on remembrance. And we talked about a little bit about how you should use things to help remind you. So pictures that you put up around the house, any type of maybe a CTR ring or whatever. We talked about our Mormon phylacteries, which are CTR rings, but then we also got into we should read the scriptures, read about the covenants and the commandments that have been made between us and the Lord, and then singing as well. Like Moses actually wrote a song for them to sing, and then they all sang it together. And so that's just a part of their culture, was to do that, to help them remember what covenants it is that they were supposed to be keeping.
My thoughts.
You weren't even there.
I was there for part of it.
Can I give my thoughts before you give yours?
Okay,
thoughts?
you can give your thoughts first.
Since you were there for half of this.
Okay.
Okay, remembering. and John actually wanted your opinion on this. So, remember after 9/11, how
I will never forget.
well, exactly. What was the slogan?
Never forget.
Never forget. It was all about remembering.
Yeah.
And so it was like, and Bill Maher, who I typically hate and think is an amoral person and will burn in hell one day, but not for the same reasons everyone else thinks he will. He was like,
I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but he is kind of a bad guy.
remember his cartoon said never forget, or no, it was like, was it buying the flag? What, the little ribbon? What was it? It was because it was the very least you could do.
It was, yeah. Put the flag on, what was it? Put the flag on your car because it's literally the least you can do.
Yeah, and that would actually, this whole idea of remembrance, and I think it's funny that after 9/11, like, that was the big kind of feeling throughout the country was, don't forget, we will never forget, like, we won't forget. It's like, well, why? What's the point of not forgetting? And I think Pete kind of answered my question today in the class of why we should forget. Not necessarily with 9/11, but with the gospel, I think, and I started to think, I got really meta at this part of the lesson when you were talking about remembering. I was thinking, okay, historically, we got 6,000 years. How do cultures change because they forget? It's like, we don't even know what really happened, 200 years ago because it's not, we don't even know what really happened 3 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Because it's not recorded properly, truthfully, anywhere.
I know. Twitter doesn't really, it's not really a archival system.
Well, even then, it's whose viewpoint is telling the story, right?
Totally.
Written by the winners. So it's like, it's, this whole idea of remembrance really hit me hard to kind of remember of the point of why we should remember. And we used to joke about, lawyers didn't bring up 9/11, we used to joke about it. Like, oh, remember. It's like, oh, why don't you stop driving that Hummer or, or whatever else. But I really think there is a point to remembering. So,
it certainly makes more sense for, like, the atonement in the gospel than 9/11. You know what would have been great? You know what really would have showed the terrorists? If we didn't remember all the time. That was no big deal.
Didn't mean anything. Huh.
Meh.
Wait, there was a building there at all? I didn't know that.
Okay, so when you were talking, it reminded me a little bit, Rhett, do you remember this when we were living on West Capitol and this political booster?
Yes. I let them in and told them to talk to you.
Yeah, and like, I think it passed along. Clint's like, Rhett, take this, and then Rhett was like, John, take this, and of course Joe was asleep. But and so we were talking to this political guy, and he was saying like what the city needs, and he was trying to get us to vote for a specific person, and he was going off. We were talking to him for like 40 minutes.
Yeah, because I didn't like his style.
Yeah, He was kind of annoying, in some regards. But at the very end, he said, and, we got to do something, you guys, because otherwise the Mormons will just take over. and we're all just kind of like looking around like, what? But you know who you're talking to, right? And he's like, oh, what, are you guys all Mormons? Well, yeah, we all are. And it's kind of that kind of bothers me because I always kind of felt a little bit bad. It's good living in your house now, Pete, because you have all your Deseret book rejects that you're like throwing all over the house. So we look like a Mormon house now. But before, no one could tell, because we weren't remembering by what we surrounded ourselves with.
Well, and that was a big part of your lesson today, Pete, that I actually wanted to comment on, and I didn't feel like today was. I didn't feel like unless I should do it, but I totally feel like now I should.
Okay.
Were you there when he expressed his story about work? No, the guy at work didn't know he was LDS.
Tell you what, why don't I do that?
Okay.
Those couple of stories. So I have an employee who, after like 3 or 4 months, I had no idea if this guy was LDS or not. I just had no idea. And it wasn't until I, caught part of another conversation that I wasn't even a part of that it came out. I was like, oh, this guy's LDS. Holy cow. It was like nothing in the way that he spoke, nothing in the way that he acted, or the things that he surrounded himself with led me to believe that he was LDS at all. Like, he wasn't a bad guy. He's actually a really cool guy. I like him. I consider him a friend. But I just remember thinking, boy, how sad for that guy that he is, nothing makes me think that he is LDS. Mm-hmm. Well, about 3 weeks ago, one of my other coworkers told me about a conversation he had with one of my clients, a guy that I interact with like almost every week. He said, "Oh yeah, Pete, I was talking to Trevor, and he was surprised to find out that you're LDS." I was like, "Wow, holy crap!" Like here I was, pointing fingers, to say I'm like the most LDS guy I know, but this guy had no idea.
It's surprising because didn't you have a lunch meeting with that guy where the waitress gave you some coffee and you threw it in her face?
That did not happen. Did not happen. Anyway, so that was the story that I related. It took me back, and I was like, wow, what is it about my speech and the way that I act that made people think that I wasn't LDS? Why couldn't they know that from the way that I was acting? So that's the story there.
Exactly. And I was reminded of a story of my own, and similar to where I ref soccer sometimes at an indoor soccer place, and one of the other refs actually one day he's like, "Wait," because I said something about going to a warrant activity. He's like, "Wait, you're LDS?" I was like, "What, are you kidding me? I've known you for like a year now." And I was like, "Really?" I'm like, "You didn't think I was LDS?" He goes, "I just didn't know." I'm like, "Well, I'm a BYU fan." He goes, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're LDS." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Is it because I swear?" Because I tend to swear sometimes. He goes, "I never noticed you swear." And I'm like, "So what made you think that?" He goes, "I don't know." And so I had kind of the same experience. I'm like, wow, what am I exuding here that says I'm not LDS? And I had a thought about this in the lesson today. Is the stigma of being LDS the scrapbooking, annoying stereotype that we don't want to be? So because we're not and here in Utah, are people assume you see what I'm getting at here?
I was gonna bring this up. A lot of times, non-LDS people around here, Salt Lake City, if we have friends who are non-LDS, telling someone, "Oh, I didn't know you were LDS," that's kind of a compliment.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, but I don't want it to sound bad.
And I think, yeah, and I don't either. To them, it's a compliment. "Oh, yeah, I didn't even know, because you weren't obnoxious or whatever." But to us, it's not, because, yes, we don't want to be the stereotypical. We don't want to be considered judgmental, but we do, we're ashamed when people don't know what we believe.
Yeah.
What I think is probably the more important thing about this is not necessarily does someone know that you are LDS, but does someone know that you are Christian? I think I would be happy if no one knew that I was LDS, but they knew that I was a believer in Christ.
What do you mean Christian? Because I think Christian,
just
Southern...
just a general... I believe in Jesus Christ.
Because,
I believe Him to
Pete,
be my Savior.
According to the definition of Christianity, Mormons aren't Christians.
So anyway, I think that I would be okay if people didn't know that I was LDS, but I should be more upset that they didn't know that I was a believer in Jesus Christ.
Well, can we say, though, yeah, that's a step, but, considering the huge things that we claim to believe about having the fullness of the gospel, shouldn't we also believe that there is something very specific about having that fullness that should exude from us, that people should know?
It should, yeah. I think the things that the reason why people might not think that I would be LDS, or even possibly Christian, is definitely the way that I talk. And definitely the way that I am around work. I thought back, when that experience happened, I really thought back, what is it? And I can pinpoint a number of things that I do that would make people say, wow, dude, that guy would never believe that kind of stuff, based on his actions and the way he speaks.
I think you speak for all of us, because I think we've demonstrated on an LDS podcast that we probably don't speak that would best behoove the disciples of Christ that we, ought to be.
On that note, Adam today shared an interesting thought about, and Adam, you could define Adam as a nonconformist.
I would.
He shared a story in Sunday school how he was on his mission, and he had kind of a problem with not the mission rules that are definitely rules, but kind of the the way kids inherit the manners, so to speak. And he met with his mission president. The mission president told him, "Look, the Lord called you. He didn't call a fake version of you. He called you." And Adam took that to be, I need to bring my personality, my persona into the mission. I know, and I've kind of thought about that before, as being, and another tangent, but kind of being, we joke about how Mormons aren't typically members of the Democratic Party. Well, if more Mormons were members of the Democratic Party, then the Democratic Party would be more associated, have more principles of the gospel in it, and that would actually be a good thing. Or, that's just an example I've heard. I don't care either way, Republicans and Democrats, but, and so I think that people aren't thinking that we're LDS. Yes, we should probably step up a little more and exude more of our Mormonism, but in a good way, in a positive way that's not the stereotypical scrapbooking, judgmental sort of way.
Well,
No?
at least not judgmental.
Yeah.
We've got nothing against scrapbooking. I mean,
That's true. I have a
It's not a sin.
scrapbooking room downstairs
That's
in my
true.
Yes,
basement.
you do.
That's true.
And I'm.
How dare you judge me, sir?
Hold on.
There is the door right there.
You mean the door that says "Return with Honor" above it?
You can come back, but just have your scrapbooking honor.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about.
John, do you have anything else? I have one thing I wanted to do, but it was going to be like a final wrap-up kind of thing.
Well, a little bit. I'm kind of reminded me in seminary, way back, my senior year of seminary. I remember we talked about Alma chapter 2-ish. You have the character of Amlici, and he was one of the Nephites who got a bunch of followers, and they went and joined the Lamanites. And there's a specific scripture in there that says, yes, these Nephites didn't look like the Lamanites, but they specifically marked themselves with the same mark that the Lamanites would mark themselves with. And he kind of used that as a lesson to say, look, there are certain marks people have. And, the mark itself isn't what's wrong. But if you do mark yourself in a specific way, if you mark yourself as more of a person who's associating with a different group of people, then that is what people see. That's how they identify you. And that always kind of stuck with me. So I never had super long hair, never had a super long beard. Last year my beard was super long. But the church made me grow it. And, I've never been really, really extreme person. And I've been kind of always a sort of modest person anyway, especially when it comes to appearance and stuff. But I kind of had proclivities to kind of go a little extreme, but that's always just kind of been on my mind,
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's all I had.
Okay. I wanted to cover something that has always been kind of a bug for me, and it was because of a class that I went to that kind of helped put all of the things in order for me. Why wasn't Moses allowed to go into the Promised Land?
Because he struck the rock and he said...
Yeah, the striking of the rock, right?
Right. Let's see here. I want to read a few different scriptures here. So in Deuteronomy chapter 34 and verse 4 through 6, it says... I went to the wrong place. Numbers chapter 20 is the place where it happened. Sorry, I got my reference wrong there. Numbers chapter 20, verses 2 through 6. And I'm just going to read that here. And there was no water for the congregation. They gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people chode with Moses and spake, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. And why have you brought the congregation of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our cattle should die there? And wherefore we have made us to come out of Egypt, to bring us unto this evil place. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. They fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. So, once again, the Israelites are upset about not having any water. And so they go to get an answer from the Lord. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, starting up in verse 8, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. And thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink. So here's what actually happens. Verse 9. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. Okay, that's one point he should have done. He did it correctly. Verse 10. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? So point number 2, he does that successfully. Verse 11. And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. So that's everybody always thinks, okay, well, the Lord was annoyed with Moses because of this, and so therefore he doesn't get to go in.
Right.
Because he smote the rock instead of speaking to it. I don't think that's the reason that he doesn't get to go into the promised land. If you look at some of your maps, and I probably should have done this beforehand.
Yep.
Let's see here. Israel's entry into Canaan. Here we go. This is map number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
A similar map was put up on the blog last week.
It's probably a very similar map. Anyway, it's a very, very interesting thing. Moses, who is the prophet, is out there, and it's been said that when they passed through when they parted the sea, that they took them through, that was basically their baptism. And so they then went, through their sojourn in the wilderness, and that was basically similar to like their life here upon earth. And then it was Joshua who was responsible for bringing them into the promised land, or it could be said the presence of the Lord itself. And the name Joshua is actually the same name that we go with Jesus.
Right.
So it's like the Hebrew form of the name Jesus. So it's Jesus who brings you across the river, parts the veil for you, so to speak, and brings you into the promised land. I think that it really doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the Lord was, ticked off with Moses because he, hit the rock instead of speaking to it.
But it's
I think the Lord is going for the symbolism here. I really think that he is.
So, like, Moses is the father, and he goes through the son to get us into the promised land.
Moses or Moses is just the prophet who is down here upon the earth and leads us. But it is Jesus who takes us into the promised land. I really think that is how the reason that Moses doesn't go into the promised land. That it is. I suppose another reason one could say is, maybe, hey, you know what, there's going to be more than just one prophet to come along here. This is the next prophet who's going to take you the rest of the way. But I don't think that Moses was being, I don't think the Lord was slapping his hand, so to speak.
Yeah,
to say, shame on you, and just for that, you don't get to go in.
For some reason, it's in my head, and I can't remember any other reason. Because I've heard several different reasons, like and several different people argue points on why Moses wasn't being punished. That Moses actually was, a pretty really really good guy.
I won't say anything against Moses. I mean, for all the faults that I read through, in the first 5 books of the Bible, he does some dumb things from time to time. Mm-hmm. But you know what? That guy put up with the Israelites for 40 years.
Yeah.
He gets a free pass in my book.
Yeah. Plus, then there was the Planet of the Apes and Omega Man and all those. Ben-Hur. Yeah, so went through a lot.
That's a Charlton Heston reference, everyone.
And the one thing I would say about this, though, I would say he was not let into the promised land because he didn't. It says in there, because you believe me not, you will not be brought in. I think that's the reason, but I don't think it's the only reason. So, was he being punished? I don't think he was being punished, but I think it's the reason. Does that make sense?
Not really. I don't see the correlation between the two. I mean, it's clear in Deuteronomy chapter 3 that the Lord says to Moses, "Look, you're not going to get to go in."
Yeah,
and that's going to be the way that it goes. I just don't. I really don't believe that it was the Lord trying to punish Moses.
Like it's the excuse.
Well, yeah, like there's nowhere here where it says the punishment. It's other than if you think because he does say because you believed me not. So if you're like, well, he's being punished because he didn't believe the Lord. I don't know. I have a problem. I don't have a problem. I'm having a hard time grasping this a little bit. He didn't go in the promised land because It says, the next verse, because ye believed me not. And the footnote says, i.e. not speaking to the rock, striking it instead, to sanctify me, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land. Now,
Yeah.
can we derive it?
It's absolutely possible that really is the reason why he doesn't get to go in. I don't have any special knowledge or anything
reason.
like that. I just think that there is a better reason for him to not go in, and it's because of the prophet Joshua.
Well, and it's obviously a type of what was to come then, if you're looking at it that way, right?
Sure, you bet. Sorry,
So,
I should have started all of that off by saying, once again, that this is not actual church doctrine. This is just what
this
what
whole
Peter
podcast
Nash
has a
believes.
disclaimer. But I'm trying to think.
We just haven't stated the disclaimer for a while, that's
God.
all.
That there's a... this happens in Scripture all the time, and I think it has to do with maybe it's the omniscience of God, of knowing it's going to happen, so why not set up this little type? Why not call Joshua instead of something else?
You bet, yeah.
I don't know. I'm with you though. I like the idea of it not being a punishment. That's just what it is, the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, Joseph Smith didn't bring the settlers over here.
That's right.
Was he not allowed to?
I don't think so. I think the reason that happened is the testator had to seal his blood.
Okay.
I don't know. That's just...
Joseph Smith wasn't allowed to. As you say that, I mean, how much did it help the people to enable them to follow Joshua? If they already got into the promised land, Moses dies and is like, okay, here's the new guy.
I think it'd be a problem.
He wouldn't have earned his points with the people as easy. It was almost like...
It's a great secession of leadership.
Yeah, and same thing with Brigham Young. And it's not like it's not like they had to do it, but it was almost like a gift to the people, so they didn't have to go through the trial of trying to accept someone that they didn't see prophetically. It's almost like God giving a sign, when it wasn't asked for, but it was very helpful.
Right. Okay.
Cool. I like it.
All right. Awesome lesson. Well done, Pete.
Now we'll move on to part 2.
Part 2, yes. This is going to be fun. We're just going to talk a little bit about some of our favorite and least favorite Mormon movies. And I don't want to say best and worst, because I think we're going to get into a few that we can't really, that are bad, that like we have reason for hating, like be it doctrinally or morally, perhaps stylistically, whatever. But this is just some of our favorite movies. So I don't know if we want to start with
John, you start.
Okay, fine. Let's start with the good.
Okay.
I just want to give an honorable mention to a favorite movie of mine, which is actually Singles Ward, which a lot of people hate. And I just want to throw it out there that, as far as I know, one reason I love the movie Singles Ward is because there is a joke in it. That, as far as I know, I am the only person to get this joke that happens in Singles Ward. And I got to set it up this way. You guys went on missions. Did you ever watch the movie On the Way Home?
Yes, we're on our way, Jenny. We're on our way.
We're on our way. Pete, you watched On the Way Home?
Sure, yeah.
You had the Scottish dubbed version of On the Way Home?
Well, I went to Scotland Spanish speaking, so I actually just used the Spanish version.
Okay, awesome. In the movie On the Way Home, side story.
I think I know what you're referring to, which means I'm the second person to get the joke. Go on.
Right. Well, didn't I explain you the joke?
It's very possible.
Okay.
When this came out 10 years ago, we talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about this in Singles, and this is like the third time I saw Singles Ward where I got this. But first, I have to explain the movie On the Way Home. There's a portion in On the Way Home when the fellowshipper of this family who is about to get baptized this day, there's a flashback to when the fellowshipper is talking to her friend at high school. Her friend, who was a very pretty, very sweet girl, who's dating the quarterback, and they're like, so how's it going? And the kind of slutty friend is like, so did you kind of, she used some like euphemism for having sex. Did you, do it with him? And she's like, oh no, he kind of wants to take it a little faster than I'm willing to go, so I think I might hold off. And the crazy worldly girl's like, you better, or someone else will. So that's just the way it is. Those are the facts of life. And then she walks away.
And then the Mormon chick.
And then the girl who's about to be baptized, who hasn't actually been introduced to the gospel yet, because this is a flashback, says, maybe she's right. Close up on the Mormon chick. She goes, maybe she's wrong. Why not wait until marriage to have sex? And that's the part, whenever I'm showing it with investigators, I'm like holding a pillow. I'm like, I hope they don't freak out about this part. I hope they don't either laugh or do something or like go, like, whatever. Because it always makes me uncomfortable. I mean, I'm a missionary, first of all, right? So, anyway, so that's the part in On the Way Home. On the Way Home, I think, is an example of a good LDS-made movie.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty interesting. You can't show it to old people, though, because they don't have all the concepts of flashbacks and modern filmmaking that we kind of grew up with, whatever. In the movie Singles Ward, there is a part in Singles Ward where the main heroine of the movie is locked out of her apartment, and she has her laundry basket, and she's locked out, and so she has to break into her own apartment, and she's, like, crawling around trying to break in. There's a woman talking on her cell phone, walking around, who sees her, and who thinks she's, like, burglarizing the place. A lot of people don't notice this because her hair is completely different. But that woman is the same girl who plays the Mormon friend in On the Way Home. The conversation she is having on the phone goes like thus. Maybe she's wrong. You know what? No, maybe she's right. So the joke in Singles Ward that I'm pretty sure I'm the only one to get because I've explained this to like 50 people. The girl in On the Way Home is suddenly changing her mind about the level of promiscuity you should have when you're in high school and before marriage. Which I think is really funny, which is not very good and moral, not a very good message at all. And maybe that's why one of many, why Singles Ward is not considered a very good movie by many of us. But
I
think it's funny.
enjoyed Singles Ward, but the problem is I saw it so many stinking times.
Yeah.
Way, way too many times.
You do own it, I noticed.
Yeah, I do.
I didn't know that.
Well, I don't own it. I have a copy of it that I got from work at some point. I never purchased it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't steal it either, just so we're clear.
Sure you didn't. Sure you didn't. Just like you did Harry Potter 6.
It was just... There was just too much of it. I saw it too many times, and it's like... I'm over it, and it's like, it's boring.
Right. Let me talk about Singles Ward, my take. Because I actually also like the movie. And it walked a very fine line. It's okay made, done. It's, as far as production, it's okay. It's not terrible. It was, for what we had seen at the time, it was better than a lot we had seen at the time. And a lot since, actually. But it was not, it walked the line of being campy and cheesy and harping on the same old Mormon jokes we get so tired of. Mm-hmm. But it actually did it okay with them. Mm-hmm. And the ones that made it actually did fine with. It was the sequels to it that I thought they went way too far with the cliches. They were giant cliches.
The RM?
The RM, the Home Teachers, and Church Ball.
Which I actually never saw Home Teachers at Church Ball.
My dad loves the Home Teachers. Absolutely loves it. He has probably seen it at least 20 times.
Uh-huh.
He laughs just as hard on the 20th time as it does the first time. And that's my dad. He just loves that ridiculously stupid stuff.
It's in a cliche. The entire 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's a dumb movie. It really is.
Maybe if it came out first.
The RM I was okay with because it actually touched on some stuff I experienced after I got home. But it's still, that's when they started introducing the cliches too much. Like the food storage you had to sleep on and the pyramid schemes and everything else. It was just too much. It was like, okay, look, we get it.
I actually really like the pyramid scheme joke.
I like it, but they did it too much.
Hilarious, man.
There were two funny parts in the RM.
Okay.
First funny part is when he goes to meet his girlfriend that waited for him. And they're on the doorstep, and she breaks up with him on the doorstep, and the family is watching with a video camera, recording the breakup.
And his name's Kirby, and she breaks up with him for a dude named Kirby, but the actor's name in real life is Kirby, who she's breaking up with. She's like, "What? That's a vacuum." It's okay,
That is weird.
Like, I think they did okay. I just think they went downhill after Singles Ward.
Well, and then the other funny part, of course, is him giving up on, because he's doing the telemarketing. He's like, where am I getting?
Oh, yes. That's actually my favorite part of the whole movie.
Yeah, what? Oakland, East St. Louis, Ogden? I can't do these.
I can't sell these people. Like, you sell the crappy ones. It's like...
Well, my favorite thing, the funny thing about the RM, and Rhett, you and I talked about this, we saw Singles Ward, we had low expectations, we enjoyed it, and then the RM came out a year later. We were really excited to see the RM because we were so surprised at Singles Ward. We saw it, and we hated it. We did not like it. And then a year after that, we're at a Provo party, as we often were, and we bump into the guy who's Therm in the commercials.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Not David Dillon. I know him. I see him in Sonic all the time. He's friends with Jerem's brother.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we ever saw him, right?
Yeah.
At this little party.
We were at Raintree.
Yeah. It was this Raintree party, and you were over there, and you were
who else
talking
was
to
at that
him.
party? Oh, wait, go on.
I know who else was at the party. But, so Therm was over there, and you were talking to him, and I came over to talk to him, because I'm like, oh, hey, I'll schmooze with this little local celebrity, whatever. And you were talking about, you were, like, in your conversation, you're like, yeah, the RM was great. I really appreciate it. I'm like, what is Rhett talking about? We hate the RM. What's going on? And so I said to him, like, you know what, Singles Ward is awesome. I had a great time with Singles Ward. The RM, not so much. I don't really get, something was missing there. I don't know, it was the story. It's just, it didn't really grab me as well. And then Clint's sister was there, and she's like, so what did you do for the RM? He's like, well, I produced it, and I co-wrote it. So I insulted
well done,
him
John.
pretty bad, yeah.
Who else was at that party?
Julie Stouffer. Yeah,
Julie
Julie Stouffer
Stouffer
was at that party from
that
the
is?
real world, yeah.
The Mormon
Sorry.
from the real world.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I never really watched MTV, so I don't know who that is.
Was it New Orleans? She was shorter than I thought she would
Oh,
be.
she was annoying.
Anyway.
Wait, there was a Real World Salt Lake?
Awesome.
Yeah, Real World Salt Lake would be pretty fun. The other problem I had with the RM that I was totally expecting is, I don't know about you guys, but when I was a freshman in college, this probably didn't apply to you so much, Pete, I was so sick of RMs coming and taking all my girls.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I can't wait till I go on my mission and come back, and just all the girls will just love me. Will just absolutely love me. In the movie The RM, this girl breaks up with him, and this hot girl that he just meets just falls in love with him too for no reason, really.
Yeah.
Then that he's an RM. But what the RM should have shown was that just because you're an RM doesn't mean that girls automatically love you. They should have shown the rejection after rejection, that happens right when you're an RM even.
I don't know if you maybe you guys had similar experience. Missionaries tend to get this high head of self-image impression of who they are. So like by the end of their mission, especially when I was in Chile, they thought they could get any girl. Like I remember guys leaving. I'm like, dude, you were in for a rude awakening when you get home. They thought because these girls in Chile all talk to them because they're missionaries and American and have blue eyes and blonde hair, whatever else. But they get home, and I remember that for those first couple months, it's like, oh, no one's talking to me at all. Like, especially in Provo on campus, it's like, people are ignoring me, like going out of their way to walk on the other side of the road.
They're only talking to that Chilean guy.
But yeah, I had a similar experience with that too. But the
Yeah.
RM, and then they went way downhill after that. But that's what I have to say. But I like Singles Ward though. I really did.
Yeah, true.
I don't think it's rewatchable.
Yeah. Singles Ward actually is not the movie that I was going to say is my favorite
I didn't
movie.
think so either.
Personally, and tons of people will disagree with me on this, but my favorite Mormon movie made by a Mormon, or at the time made by a Mormon, is Brigham City, which is probably my favorite one. Which is a murder mystery. It's not like about Mormon culture or anything, but it's a murder mystery.
It just happens to be within a Mormon society.
Takes place within a Mormon society. And a lot of people are really, really offended by this movie. And maybe they should. I don't want to say, you should or shouldn't be offended by the stuff that's
Wilford
in it.
Brimley is a real racist.
I mean, and I know, Brigham City probably wasn't racist enough for our taste. I don't know.
Do we want to talk about Dutcher or do we want to talk about the movie first?
Is he
Let's
seriously
talk about the
no
movie.
longer LDS?
No, and
Dutcher is no longer.
And I will
LDS.
talk
wow.
about that.
Okay.
Let's talk about the movie really quick.
Okay. Well, he did God's Army first. History, he did God's Army around 2000.
God's Army was pretty good.
I
That's one.
really enjoyed God's Army.
God's
That's
Army.
the actual one. That's the one I wrote down.
Okay. And then Brigham
we'll talk
City
about that.
came out a couple years later.
It was a couple years later, and it horrified people, especially because it showed the entire ordinance of the sacrament in the movie.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen Brigham City?
Yeah, I've seen Brigham City. I saw it once. I didn't watch it over and over again.
Okay, but they show it to kind of show. The way they do it is they show someone like confess to the bishop.
Yeah.
And then he says, okay, this is what we got to do. And then it shows church. It shows the sacrament. And then it shows that person not taking the sacrament because of like the repentance process that she's going through. Okay. And then all the events of the movie happen. And then the movie closes with the sacrament again. And everybody not taking it
because the bishop doesn't.
Because the bishop doesn't, and then it comes back around, and then finally
he does.
He does, and everybody does, and it's kind of supposed to show kind of the atonement in action, forgiveness.
Really, people were freaking out about that.
Well, I mean, because I don't know where it's written. I don't know if it's written.
It's written in the missionary handbook, not to take pictures or video of ordinances. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, of real things, you can film them. They've done it. The church has done it several times.
Yes, the church
does it. And I've shown that it's seen...
Kind of. But if you watch all the church ones, they do the cuts where you don't actually see it. So people saw this as like, oh, he showed it straight through. And I'm like, really?
I mean, it's not like it's secret by any means. But then at the same time, there are some things... it's kind of like the temple thing. It's not secret, but it is sacred.
Yeah.
So we talk about, although the temple thing is kind of different. I think the temple thing is kind of secret. I mean, they say don't talk about this. It's not like it matters. Well, it is, of course, but
the sacrament, it was a huge deal when it came out.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. I hadn't heard anything. I was actually living here in Salt Lake at that time too. I don't remember hearing anything.
Well, we were in Provo.
Well, I think one thing. Yeah, we were in Provo. About it, like if the roles were reversed, like if it was like some like Catholic ordinance that they used to show that they were used to symbolize what was going on in the movie, and it was a movie about a Catholic community or something like that, or any other religious community, then I would look at it and I'd be fascinated. I'm like, wow, what a well told story of how they did it and everything, and it didn't make light of the ordinance at all. And I thought it was, I thought it was pretty well done. Brigham City's great. Yeah.
I actually like States of Grace better, and I thought I hadn't seen it, and so earlier today I looked it up. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally remember this movie. Mm-hmm. It was the one he did after that. Did you see that, Pete?
No, I didn't.
It was great. Yeah.
It's about 4 missionaries in L.A.
That was the follow-up to God's Army.
It was actually called God's Army 2,
States
of Grace, but they
dropped God's Army 2.
They dropped God's Army 2 for the DVD.
Yeah, and so it had the one missionary who's almost going home, and he talks about how he was converted way back in the day, and after he was initiated into a gang, he was shot, and that's how he got converted. And there was a new missionary, and I just thought it was. I don't really have anything to say about it. That I thought it was even better than Brigham City and Singles Ward. Singles Ward's a comedy. It is what it is. Brigham City, I almost felt like Dutcher relied too much on the sacrament thing to try to get a shock out of the Mormons.
Maybe.
Which he may have, which is fine too, I guess, on some level. But I really like States of Grace Lost. That's what I'm saying.
Do you like it more than the original, like God's Army?
Yeah, definitely. I thought he developed as a filmmaker. I thought it was a better made film.
I didn't. I'd never seen it, so I'll maybe have to check it out sometime.
But yeah, you should watch it. And then, so Dutcher, Richard Dutcher, he, unless you want to talk about it, I read it today, so.
Do it.
Okay, so he actually, he graduated in like 88. I thought he was younger than that.
Yeah, he's pretty old.
He's pretty old. Yeah. His parents were a converted church. He was baptized when he was 8, but when he was young or whatever. But he talks about his conversion when he was 14. Graduated from BYU Film School. Made the God's Army was his first big one. Mm-hmm. It was around 2000. Then he made, like we talked about, Brigham City, States of Grace. In 2007, at that time, he had announced he was making a movie about Joseph Smith. And it had production problems. I remember one because there was no snow up in Canada when they were filming something. Right. So they actually started filming.
Well, I know he tried to get funding. I think Larry H. Miller, he tried to get money.
Oh, that's right.
And it was like big budget, relatively speaking, for like a Mormon production, like $8 million, which is a lot for
the God's Army. I think was like $250,000.
Yeah,
or something like that. But in 2007, he wrote a letter to the Daily Herald down in Provo that essentially said he was no longer doing Mormon. He was retiring from Mormon movies and from Mormonism, and he was taking. He worded it very academically, very...
Like his spirituality is going a path that does not include Mormonism at this time, kind of
Mormon,
thing.
Not Mormonism, he called it, not doctrine, what's the word? Dogma or something like that. And it was very interesting. It was like, what? Where's he going? And I remember Eric Snyder, who's one of our favorite film critics who came from BYU, he wrote about it, and he's no Dutcher, obviously. He wrote about it and said, too many people in Provo jumped to the conclusion that there was some grievous sin by Dutcher. He said, you shouldn't do that. Look, he's doing what he's doing. And it's sad, but... And then, do you remember Keith Merrill?
Yes.
Wrote into the Daily Herald about Dutcher and pretty much condemned him for it.
Yeah.
Told him
it was funny
good
because
riddance and go to hell.
he opened up like the letter. I know I'm going to regret doing this, but I'm going to go do it anyway. And
then he wrote a retraction to it, so it was an apology.
He was seriously, he totally called it on himself.
But it's interesting, and Dutcher hasn't done anything since. I looked at a recent movie called Falling.
I've heard of that.
And it screamed once here at one theater.
Apparently, it's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it was rated, but it would have been rated R. And it's just kind of gruesome, kind of, independent, kind of, I think it's about a couple who experience problems and they go through all sorts of really heavy-duty problems. That's what the movie's about.
But the interesting thing about Richard Dutcher is that people have called him the Godfather of Mormon cinema because he kind of did the first good Mormon films that was not by the church. And then all the pretenders came along. And in his article when he left when he wrote the Daily Herald, he specifically called them out and said, look, there's some beautiful things you can do in Mormonism. And I've always had this theory too, especially when, the REM home teachers I saw, and it was terrible.
It was. It's
really
bad.
Like it looks like we did it with a handy cam out on the west side of Utah County. Parts of it. It's so ridiculous. But he called them out and said, look, there are good things in the Mormon church and good things you can even laugh about or make, have drama about. But they've got to be well made and not just fall back on the old cliches. And I've always thought that too. So that was a really interesting part of it. But yeah.
It brings up something interesting. I don't know. Actually, that's kind of a side comment after we finish talking about movies that I wanted to mention that. But Pete, actually, maybe as long as we're talking about Dutcher, maybe you should talk about God's Army. What you want to say about that?
Just really liked God's Army.
Okay, thank you, Pete.
That was my... It was actually... I was in Fresno when that came out. I was attending Fresno State. And one of the people that I taught seminary to, their family were like, dude, you've got to come over. You've got to watch this. This is really, really good. And so I remember watching it and thinking, wow, he brilliantly captured a lot of the things that go on in a mission. Not perfectly.
No.
And there were a number of things I look back and I think, good heavens, no way in the world would any mission president be like that. These things would never happen. They were...
does this mission president know the commitment pattern?
And so I think that, aside from those little things, it was actually a really, really well-made film. And I would enjoy sitting down and rewatching it even today. Whereas something like The Singles Ward, I couldn't sit down and watch The Singles Ward again. I've just seen it way too many times, and it's just not that enjoyable to do.
Okay.
One of these days, maybe we should watch a Mormon movie we haven't seen and then movie review it.
Love it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. But Dutcher, though.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about Dutcher. I don't know what he's doing now. I hope he's well. I thought he did pretty good films.
Yeah, no, they were really great. And he was, I think he was an artist in like the purest sense. And I think he had this idea, and at the time, like when God's Army came out, I was just kind of like, oh, come on, please. That's capitalizing on the church, and that's no good. But then the more I thought about it, and then Singles Ward started coming out, and all these Mormon movies came out, and then everybody else had their backlash. But then I thought about it, I'm like, why? This is a huge part of our lives.
Yeah. Like
Mormonism, more than other things, like...
He portrayed it in a positive role as well. Not any part of it did he, make fun of or try and tear down any part of, what a mission was. He just presented it as it was. Mm-hmm. And, the good and the bad parts of it, the fact that you have really great missionaries and you have really kind of waster missionaries who are just, screwing around out there. Mm-hmm. I think that, almost on a speaker for the dead kind of level, where he just said, look, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a great way to present that to a film media type of audience who could say, oh, well, here's a actually fairly accurate portrayal of what it's like to be an LDS missionary into a world that they would never ever see ever. So I think it was positive all around.
Well, and just as far as like introducing the whole concept of Mormon cinema to us, why not? Like, why don't we watch movies that specifically apply to us? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, hey, yeah, you know what? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be like a doctrinal movie, but we have a very unique culture, that's worth making the movies about. As long as we're talking about missionary movies, I just got to say, best 2 years, not as good as God's Army, I would say, but that first discussion in the best 2 years, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, that was really enjoyable.
It was probably my favorite presentation of like a missionary discussion and what it's like. I thought they did it brilliantly. Things just suddenly turn in that scene.
Interesting thing about the best 2 years, I was actually at Deseret Book at the time, and I can't remember if Deseret Book was actually a part of it or not, but I know that we heavily advertised it for them in our stores, and I remember being able to go to a screening of it. And I actually ended up talking to... He plays the part of the mission president in that movie, but I think he was either the director or the producer of the film itself. I remember him talking to us and saying, okay, did you notice these things about the movie as you were watching it? Like, he was asking me to critique him in the film, and he was pointing out the things that he was worried about. And I remember thinking, no, actually, I didn't notice any of those things. If you hadn't just told me about this, I would have assumed that you filmed all of this in Holland, and that none of this was actually here, in Salt Lake. And I remember thinking, wow, it's kind of cool to be able to talk to somebody like that who, normally I would just sit back and think, wow, I'd love to be able to talk to that guy.
Nice.
And it was kind of cool.
Before we move on to church-made movies, I just want to bring up one concept really quick. And I think this is a future podcast because I think this is pretty big. Thinking about the role of artists in the LDS community.
Okay, I like it.
Because we have Dutcher, and I think one really... I want to call this disastrous because, I've always had... You guys know I have this huge respect for artists. I like to consider myself an artist to a certain extent, but I'm too insecure. Mostly because of comments like that. But, I've always thought an artist is like the highest thing, that, I could be. To actually be able to call myself an artist and to be able to have that creativity and everything. But Mormon artists, a lot of times you see this happen. I think we saw this with Dutcher. The art is so important to them that it actually is more important than the gospel. Sure. Like his idea and
that
his ideals,
their God.
Right. His ideals on this and his representation on this is, that takes over, and also the church populace, they're very good at scrutinizing the church's artists, and I'm not surprised that a lot of people would come down on Stephanie Meyer for writing a book about vampires, and it's inevitable that people would try to see some semblance of Mormonism in these books about vampires. And, what is inevitable for the future of Stephanie Meyer, for example. She has these stories, and it's innocent. She can write about whatever she wants. They're stories, they're fictional. But how does that affect her? And more likely, how does it affect people see her and then, in effect, affect her? Orson Scott Card, another example.
Do we want to talk about this now, or are we doing another podcast?
We're doing another podcast, but be thinking about these examples. Orson Scott Card, he mentions Mormonism in Ender's Game, but yet there are these aliens. Do they need to be baptized? I don't know. And also he swears a lot. So,
let's think about that. So we'll leave it at that. And I just wanted to mention, I don't know how much more we're planning to go in here, but we've actually had some people send in some comments to the blog and emails.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to say thanks to those people who have. If you guys have anything to really point out and say, oh, I think you guys are full of crap, don't be afraid to email us or to post on the blog, because we would love to hear your comments, whether good or bad. And we appreciate those people who have sent some stuff in. And if you guys have some thoughts on some of the stuff that we're thinking about for future podcasts, send it in. I know our friend Laura sent in some topics that she would like us to cover sometime.
Oh, yeah. We should mention those. I think I need to write those down on the list.
Yeah, we really... I should just talk to Emily about one of those particular items. So we'll get her on here. That'll be her show for sure.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I told her. Okay, but Mormon movies?
Are we going to talk about Other Side of Heaven?
If you want to. That's not made by the church, right?
No, it's not.
Do you want to mention
Was Best 2 Years Made by the Church?
No, none of the ones we've talked about, I think, except for On the Way Home.
Okay. I don't want to talk about it. I want to know if you guys want to. I'm okay with it.
Actually, you know what? I never saw The Other Side of Heaven.
You should. It's an enjoyable movie.
It's good. I was in charge of it's over at women's conference with 500 women who were trying to crack into the
Production-wise, it's way, way better than God's Army. I mean, they really had a pretty big budget for all of this thing. It's actually a good movie. It's well told, and it's not completely accurate, but for the most part, it's what it was for that guy's life. Yeah, okay. It's definitely worth
Gave
it.
Him some political traction. I'm just kidding.
Okay, nice.
Movies made by the church.
Made by the church. Okay, favorite. I know my favorite definitely.
Well, and here was my problem. When I thought about this, like I was thinking all the shorts, and I'm thinking, no, I'm going to stay away from the shorts.
You know I actually had some of mine are shorts that are on here.
Because
define a short.
Lamb of God.
Wow, I would consider that one.
It's like 5 minutes.
Lamb of God? No way, dude. It's like 30.
What? I think you're thinking of the video made by the band Lamb of God. The collection of their music videos.
I'm talking about the one where there's no dialogue.
That's a 30-minute thing. It shows like the
I think
bird.
You guys are mixing up Lamb of God and To This End Was I Born. Aren't those two different movies?
Yes, I am confusing them. But they're both shorts, because even if it is 30 minutes, it's still a short.
That is pretty short, Pete.
You're right. I am confusing it with To This End I Was Born.
So then what would you consider to be a short? Because I don't know...
Any of the movies that we would watch for 5 minutes in Sunday school where it could lead into
if you can watch it within... a seminary period.
Yeah, exactly. So Alma 5, Armor of God, Spiritual Crocodiles, The Phone Call,
The Mediator.
The Mediator is the classic.
The Letter.
I don't know that one.
That's the one where she goes and checks the mail
every day.
Single day.
The mailbox.
The mailbox.
Oh, it's all the mailbox.
That's my aunt, Aunt Lethe.
And then Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben.
I love that
the
one.
alcoholic one?
Yes.
KS Real. What is real? We watched that one a lot on the mission.
What is real? That's another one you can't show old people.
Labor of Love we showed a lot because it shows a baptism, and we'd always say, hey, look, this is what you're going to be next week. Because I was in Chile, and it was every week.
So that means all we're left with are the ones that they've shown at the Joseph Smith Memorial Building.
Okay, that's true. We have. I can think of 4 movies. One of them. Okay, see if you can guess which one is the one I like. We have Legacy, The Testaments, the Joseph Smith movie. Is that what it's called? Yeah. The Joseph Smith movie?
Yeah, we'll just call it that.
And Mountain of the Lord, a feature-length movie.
We all know that it's Mountain of the Lord. The two of us here know that it's Mountain of the Lord.
Yes.
But you could have given the listeners a couple of seconds to think about it.
Show that in Elder's Tour.
Well, Mountain of the Lord is the best church-made feature-length film.
Mountain of the Lord is a great movie.
It is great.
It really is. I think that they did a good job with it.
It's too bad we don't get to see it on the big screen.
I'm not so fond of the Scottish accent that's used by the actor in there, but it's a good movie.
He gets what he deserves. He explodes.
He does die. Are you happy?
No, he doesn't die, doesn't he?
He doesn't. He loses an arm.
Which is, you see him fall and you see him explode, and you're like, there's no way he survived that. But, no, Mountain of the Lord is great. The way it's told, the Wilford Woodruff at the end, the stuff that they tie together at the beginning, and it's doctrinal. The other movies, the ones that
Legacy?
the church... Legacy. I'll say it. I don't get those. I don't understand why they're shown, like, on Temple Square, and why they're... and I don't understand, like, people who would go and see this fictional movie and think, that they would better understand the church by watching it.
I do.
Okay.
I absolutely do.
The Joseph Smith movie isn't fictional.
Okay.
Yes, there was a real person named Joseph Smith.
It's called... Well, if you want to get ticky-tack, it's historical fiction because it is told through the two narrators who are coming across or whatever on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But all the
I've never seen that one, by the way.
You should see it. It's really good.
It's the best of the ones I don't like.
I saw it about 2 or 3 months ago. So it's not like Legacy was fictional. The Testaments was completely fictional.
Oh my gosh. Worst one ever.
And we can get into those, but I do have to say I like the Joe Smith movie. I like it a lot. I saw it recently. I liked it when I saw it again. It was the stories that you can take out of that have been taken from they're the typical Joe Smith stories. He sold them his horse, the healing down on the banks. There's a bunch of them. The tar and feathering. I thought it was very well done. I did like it a lot.
The Joseph Smith story is very similar to Legacy. It's fictional in the same way Legacy is.
No, it's not. Legacy was a lot more fictional.
Oh, not Legacy. No, sorry. I was Mountain of the Lord. I always get those mixed up. Because Mountain of the Lord isn't completely
That's true. Okay, yeah. To answer your question, why it's shown the way it's shown, I think the church wants to do movies and use this medium, this form of media, but they do not want to do release through theaters, distributed through theaters. I don't think they want people to pay for it. I don't think they want the exposure from it. Well, like if they do it this way, then media critics
control it.
They can control
otherwise
it.
It's going to end up on at the movies, on a Saturday night.
Well, not exactly, and criticize to the point where they're like they could say, well, this is the official church. This is what the church wants us to do. Like this is another. And so if it's released this way, it's different, but. And it's to get affect people. People come from all the world and want to know what's the Mormons about, and it gives them a taste of what we're about.
If I wasn't a Mormon,
okay.
and I came and I saw Legacy or I saw the Testaments,
I'm not talking about those two. I'm talking about Joseph Smith movie.
Okay, fine. I'll give the Joseph Smith movie a pass. The Joseph Smith movie is way better than Legacy.
I'm saying they've gotten a lot better. I'm saying what. Let's move to Legacy. I think what happened is originally when they wanted to do it, and this is totally my take, they're like, we want to do a movie. And for all those reasons I just said. Mm-hmm. They went to a high-profile Mormon, Keith Merrill, said he won an Oscar. We'll have him do it. He's a good Mormon in good standing. We'll have him do it. And they just had him do it. And it was a little bit of a good old boys network through the church. Mm-hmm. I think that's how it got made. And it's fun to watch now because it's so funny, but my goodness.
I think that it's absolutely worthwhile to be showing on there, and I think that people who aren't members of the church, it helps them understand, okay, why in the world did these people even come out here? What was the reasoning behind it? Because you can definitely see that there are people who, they question their faith, but in the end they say, oh, you know what, this is really what I believe, and I'm going to come out here, and, I am going to build a life for myself and my family because of these beliefs that I have. It moves me that much that I'm going to put up with all of the crap that I have to go through to, come to our promised land, if you will.
Let me ask you this, John. If Legacy were made today, I think it would be made a lot different. I think it'd be made more in the style of the Joe Smith movie.
Right.
Would you like it better then?
If it was made differently than the way I hate, then yeah, I suppose.
Okay, so what do you hate about it? I guess we should, because and there are probably the same reasons I don't like it.
This is a contextual thing, actually, and this is one thing I want to say. A big, huge reason that I don't like Legacy is because that's the movie that is shown on Temple Square as a representation of the church. I don't think it
was shown.
Fine. I don't think. It should be used in that context. It's the context that really bothers me about it, because as I was saying a little while ago, if I was a member and I saw this movie and I go to see this film that's about Mormonism, I'm actually there. I'm expecting a tract. I'm expecting just pure, this is it, this is what we went through, these are the true stories, these are real people, they actually existed. And to get some fanciful tale, that offends me. I feel like I'm going into Scientology, that L. Ron Hubbard produced it.
I can tell John's getting passionate by the inflection in his voice. I agree
that's
with you.
Awesome.
That I never thought about that actually until just now, but I'm with you, and that's why I honestly think church is trying to distance itself from Legacy.
I think that so you're basically saying, look, do some vignettes of actual events that happen in real people's lives. Right. They don't have to be a full long story, but you can piece them together in a way that they jump from different story to different story.
Do you know what would be great to see on the big screen? You don't even have to up it to high definition, but just show the restoration of the priesthood video up on the big screen. That's the kind of stuff that should be shown at Temple Square for tourists.
Watch the Joe Smith movie.
Joseph Smith is better than Legacy for sure. Can I actually? Okay, and let me
Digress.
talk about the Testaments a little bit. Testaments is officially the worst feature-length movie that the church has made, and for the reasons I've said, but also there are little tiny things about the Testaments that bother me. And this is the big thing, Okay, so people watch the Testaments.
What about?
And they're like, okay, so the Book of Mormon is about this family who lived at this time, and there's this guy named Kohor.
And Helam?
And Helam. And the son in this movie, The Testaments, that's about the coming of Christ, his name is Jacob. And in the Book of Mormon, that book that we believe in, at the time of Christ, Jacob was the name of the Antichrist at the time. How did that fly by the producers of the Testaments?
I don't know.
Don't forget the big reveal at the end, because he's blind. And then he's like, I'll never get to see the Messiah. And then he gets to see him.
I don't remember that.
Here's my big problems with it. Number one, the guy who's like the main character,
The white guy?
the white guy who has a horrible spray-on tan.
Yes, I do.
It's just so awful. And then number two, the guy who they get to play Jesus, once again, way white, and the beard and mustache and hair piece that they have on him look ridiculously fake.
Yeah,
it's as though they said, oh, you know what? All we have left for Jesus is about $15. Run down to Savers and see what you can find.
Well, he didn't have that big a role in the movie.
It was just such a ridiculously stupid thing.
Well, you know how you like to, get a haircut and shave before a big job interview? I mean, these people were, it's the role of their lives. They're like, I can't let people know I'm lax in my Mormonism by having a beard and long hair.
I will say one thing. I did enjoy the fact that when they would, pan over and look to portrayals of the life of Christ, they were going from like the actual paintings that we all see. Like they were reenacting those scenes. I liked that, but the guy that they got to play Jesus was just blatantly wrong. In every way, shape, or form, wrong. I'm sorry. When I get on a kick when I talk about when people talk about what did Jesus look like, I say, well, have you ever seen a Jew in Israel? Yeah, he looked like that. He didn't look white.
He had blue eyes.
Just bugged the daylights out of me.
According to Daniel, it was black. So
yeah,
I don't know if too many Rastafarians have thrown that one at you.
Actually, I never got that.
Anyway, my rant against that particular film is over. I don't want to say anymore.
I saw it once. It didn't bug me. I was like, oh, it's Legacy, but made for the Book of Mormon. I'm done. Move on.
Yeah. Anyway, I just hope we get different style of movies at the big center. I mean, I've just always felt that way, that it shouldn't be.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, John. What should be the next movie then?
I have an idea of what it will be.
The Joseph Smith one, it's been out there for, a couple years?
Yeah, they got to be making a new one by now.
So they've got to have a new one coming pretty soon. What do you think
it's going to be? Keith Merrill's IMDb page. So, for Jesus, would you like James Caviezel or...
I don't know James Caviezel I know the name, but I don't know what he looks like.
Well, he's the guy in the movie Frequency, and also the movie The Passion of the Christ.
He plays Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see either of those movies.
We should talk about The Passion someday.
Actually, you know what? That's a good question, because I never really thought, as far as topic.
Let's make that a topic. R-rated movies.
Okay.
Let's make that a topic sometime.
Add
that one to the list.
I
think we got some mileage out of that one. I think we could do something with it.
I'm sitting here trying to think of what the church needs to put in the building. Because as far as topics, okay, yes, the story of the saints crossing the plains, great. Yeah. The story of Joseph Smith, yes, of course. The story of Christ coming to America, obviously, but the way they tell the story, that's the problem I have. And I'm not sure which story they should do next, because those are the biggies.
Should they go with an Old Testament or a New Testament type of film?
No, because probably should. Will they? No, because the church for years and years now, we've always wanted to separate ourselves from all the other Christians. We're Christians, but we're not. Oh, but we are. Have you noticed that?
I'm not entirely certain I know where you're going with this, so I don't want to agree with you yet.
It goes back and forth. Like it depends on who we're talking to and who we're saying, oh yeah, we're Christian, we believe in Christ. Like half the time we're defending that we are Christians, or Mormons aren't Christians. Yeah, we are. We're the Church of Jesus Christ. Yeah, the Book of Mormon, every page of the Book of Mormon refers to Christ. We try to defend it. But then on the other half, we get thrown in the slump. Oh yeah, they're just another Christian. There's Catholics and then there's Protestants.
So we want to be different, but not too different.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I don't think they'll tackle Old Testament or New Testament because it doesn't set us apart enough. My theories are, okay, so what John was just talking about, you've got pretty much what we have to go with is, restoration type stuff. Mm-hmm. We could still, I wouldn't rule out anything from Joe Smith's life. I wouldn't rule out anything from the Salt Lake Valley, kind of the establishment here, kind of Mount of the Lord-ish a little bit. There's been the enamor lately of going back to the pioneers with Rocky Ridge. And I can definitely see something coming through there.
Mountain Meadows?
No, I won't tackle Mountain Meadows. I don't see Mountain Meadows coming out anytime soon.
That's not going to work out well for us.
Willie Hancock Company, maybe. I could see church expansion. I could see the church. I could see it just being totally random of establishing the church in Russia or
Priesthood
Germany.
Revelation 78? Really?
The Salamander letters. I'm just, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm being inappropriate now and irreverent. I should slow down, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
No, very interesting. A lot of fodder. It seems like we say that pretty much every week. We're just touching the surface of this topic.
Well, yeah.
We'll do more with it. We'll definitely do more with it next
More
time.
would require research.
Yes. I'll say it. I'm really only doing research right before we go on here.
See, I'm doing it during your lesson. But we can both agree that we're doing more than our Elders Corp teacher did today for his lesson.
Hey, you know what? Tanner actually did a good job this week.
Yeah.
For Tanner's faults, and he would admit them, he actually seemed to do a good job today. I was
don't
kind
think
of
you
proud
prepared
of
for it.
Well, he had 2 lessons to try and cover.
I think he
I
found
don't know
that
why
out
in
today.
the world he had to cover 2 lessons.
He should have just skipped one.
Yeah, and I'm like wondering if like the talk was like, he's like, oh, okay, Scott told me to talk a little bit about to skip over prayers kind of and go to prophets.
He spent the most amount of time on prayer.
I know, and I'm like wondering if Scott actually said, okay, I know you think you're teaching about prayer, but just skip to the prophets because we got to get in line. And so Tanner took it to mean like he actually has to go over both of them when he actually was assigned just one.
Anyway, yeah, well, let's definitely talk about R-rated movies one day. I would love it. And rules in general. Rules and guidelines.
Okay.
Spirit of the law, letter of the law, things like that. I think would be a great topic.
One more thing I have to say.
Sure.
This isn't not so much the movie, but the play. Saturday's Warrior is awesome. I love Saturday's Warrior. And I'll leave it at that. Maybe we can...
No, we can't leave it at that.
We can
Saturday's Warrior is the most heretical thing to ever come out of a Mormon's mouth.
You said you didn't want to have a 2-hour podcast.
I don't care. I will extend it to bash on Saturday's Warrior. Saturday's Warrior I saw growing up like everyone else. And at the time I was like thinking, this is stupid. This is so bad. It was so poorly done. And the reason people like it, and I think it's the reason you like it, is because it's nostalgic. It's not that good. It's just because it's nostalgic.
I didn't like it at the time. I grew to like it.
It's because you're a contrarian. I'm saying that, and it's heretical.
You're the one who's contradicting me.
It's a bad movie, and the last time I saw it is because I was playing Wingman with one of my friends. He's like, dude, this girl's in town. Let's go. She's got a friend. Let's go hang out with them. We go over there, and they're watching Saturday's Warrior, and Jeremy and this girl went and on the porch talked, and the girl I was supposed to be hanging out with fell asleep. Like, she was asleep when we got there. I never spoke one word to her, and I sat there by myself, couldn't figure out how to work the remote, and had to watch Saturday's Warrior. So mad.
Sounds like divine intervention to me.
So mad. And except, I will give it one exception. There's one part where he says, when he gets slapped by the dad, because he says mom's going to have a litter of puppies, he's calling her a right?
Oh.
Whoa.
We're going to have to bleep that.
Yeah, would you please? I'd love a bleep in a podcast.
I don't really think the false doctrine is too much to write home about.
That's not that bad a false doctrine.
Really?
Seriously,
So you have a
seriously,
certain number of children that you were supposed to have here, and you better get on it.
I was being sarcastic.
Okay.
Seriously, I don't really
I'm not
think too
getting
much
involved
of it.
in this.
First of all,
Music sucks.
the music is awesome. First of all, especially the song they cut out of the movie version, which is the song where he's just moping to himself, and the song is called Nothing, and it was just him being depressed and talking about, like he believes in nothing, the world means nothing, he's nothing.
That's awesome. I didn't know about
It's
this.
a pretty cool song.
Okay.
I think it'd be a great. We should cover it sometime.
All
But
right.
the songs I like, and the doctrine itself, although false in a way, I think in the context, at least it's not shown like in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building for one thing, and I think it's an interesting kind of parable. They kind of use this kind of situation that's not completely accurate, but you could use it as a parable. And also, that was back in the day when I think Mormons took chances.
Oh my goodness.
I'm serious. They took chances. They made a political stance on certain things, and it wasn't an official Mormon movie, but it was like a movie made by people about Mormonism, and it represented a certain aspect of the culture. And we argue about it, and I love it.
Okay.
And I love it within the context of Mormonism. And I think it's an awesome movie, and I like the music.
I'm totally off topic. I've got us a great outro sound for the end of our podcast.
So it is written, so it is done.
Nice.
All right, that's it. Pete, you're in charge next week, by the way.
Oh, okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.